to me, a game of hockey is also about theatre. And every time you go into the theatre, you want to be surprised. And we've had some fabulous theatre, haven't we, in EHL over so many years now.
Welcome to Studio Hockey.
Hello everybody, we are back with a new podcast and I am delighted to tell all of you we have no one other than the voice of hockey in our podcast. So rest assured, I will talk as little as possible. You will not be annoyed by my annoying voice. You will have the smooth voice of Nick Irvine talking hockey. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks very much, Jens. And hi everybody, I hope you're all staying nice and well in these crazy times.
Nick, let's dive into it immediately. You are the one of the most well-known and respected hockey commentators out there in the world, and you've been the voice of European Hockey League, which has been a landmark for our sport, obviously. But why did you become a sports commentator, and why did you become a hockey commentator, and how?
Yeah, well, a lot of people ask me that, and like so many things in life, it owes a lot to serendipity and my good fortune. I started my working life as a schoolmaster, director of sport, and obviously hockey played a big part in that. And then I got involved in helping to organise the Men's World Cup in London in 1986. And that showed me another side of hockey. As a volunteer, I was having to continue with my schoolwork, of course. But it showed me what went on behind the scenes in organising hockey events, with a particular interest, perhaps, in the media as well. I'd always wanted to be a sports reporter. As a young boy, soccer was my game, and I used to write. Yeah, well, I'm still very fond of my soccer, it has to be said. But in those days, aged about 11 and 12, I'd never seen a hockey game. And B, at school, my sport was soccer, and we started a little boys' football club in my village or town of Kenilworth, and I used to write up the match reports, usually making sure my name got plenty of mentions, whether I'd scored or not, and it was usually not. But once I got into hockey and into the World Cup organisation, I started wondering whether I was missing out on something. Schoolmastering was a great career for me, and I don't regret any of it at all. But when the opportunity came to join English hockey in 1988 as a full-time member of staff on the promotional and events side of things, I leapt the chance. Mm-hmm. And from there, really, I fell into commentating by accident when our Great Britain men's team came back in 1988 from Seoul. They were going straight into our first ever season of the National Hockey League, and there was more media interest around on the sport because of the gold medal than ever before. And one of our regional television companies, Television Southwest, were hosting a game in the first week of the National League season between Isker, which is Exeter-based, and the famous Southgate club, who had, I think it was 5 Olympic gold medals in it. So we needed a commentator, and having examined the very short list of hockey commentators, nobody else was available. So the director, a chap called Peter Barclough, said, "Well, that's a shame, Nick. It probably means we won't be able to televise it." So as a throwaway remark, I said, "Well, I'll have a go if you like, Pete." And he went,
Hand me the mic.
Well, I wasn't quite so enthusiastic, but I thought I couldn't think it was that difficult, to be honest with you. If every schoolmaster will know that occasionally you go into a lesson slightly undercooked, slightly underprepared, and you can somehow get through it. And at least I knew my subject. I knew certainly the Southgate players and some of the Exeter Isker players as well. And I got away with it anyway. And Pete Barclough moved on, and he moved on to a forerunner of Eurosport. And a few months later, he got back to me and said, "Do you fancy picking up the mic again?" Well, I did. And that's how it started. No training, never really very much in the way of feedback, apart from our beloved hockey fans out there who occasionally tell me exactly what they think. or exactly what I should think in some cases. And
Probably.
and here we are, 30 odd years later. It's been. I am the luckiest man in the world. I hope you know that. I certainly do.
Watching that many games from this up close, you are one of the lucky ones out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, not just watching the games, but meeting the people. The characters behind our sport. So many friendships over the years. It's been. I still pinch myself on a regular basis.
Wonderful. You've been in the last decade, more or less. You've been the voice of the European Hockey League, the EHL, which has been amazing for our sport. Can you? But that I can imagine those are really tough days for you because there are several games a day. Can you walk us through a day of commentating at the EHL?
Well, I wouldn't describe them as tough days. Ernst. If I look at my diary, not this year because everything's crossed out, but in previous years, they are probably the best days in the year as far as I'm concerned. They are. The AHL has given so much to our sport, and I have to tell you, it's given a huge amount to me as well. I've made again so many new contacts, new friends. It's been wonderful to be part of the game is actually pushing the envelope, making it develop at a speed that hitherto we could only dream about. This made real changes. But the day normally starts off with a hearty breakfast in the official hotel, and then there's the thought of getting to the ground. Transport's normally arranged, so in fact, transport's always arranged. Come to think of it, so I try and arrive at the ground about an hour and a half to 2 hours beforehand. Not because there's a huge amount of preparation that can be done at that point, but really just to make sure everything's in order, making sure that the route to the commentary box hasn't been closed off by scaffolding towers or anything else. And just time to settle oneself down. I normally try and find a quiet spot in the clubhouse where I can just go through my papers and make sure everything is in order. Because with the games coming so quickly one after the other, if you're not prepped at the start of the day, pretty much for all, let's say, 4 games that might be coming up, then there is not really time between the games to do much more than possibly to grab a bottle of water, possibly to eat half a sandwich, and to pick up the all-important match sheet, which normally gets delivered to the media centre about 45 minutes before the start of a game. Because obviously the match is starting, let's say, on the hour, but the commentary is probably starting 5 or 6 minutes before that. So it's not a huge amount of time. And as regular followers of the EHL will know, we're not always blessed with great weather. So sometimes we need a little bit of time to defrost as well. But I can't pretend to you or to anybody else listening that it's anything but a pleasure and a privilege. And it has been a privilege.
No. But how do you do this preparation? Because obviously throughout the years you've come to know practically every coach, every player that's out there. How do you prepare for new players or new teams that you do not know yet?
Well, with trepidation, to be truthful. I mean, the EHL is very fortunate to have Stephen Finlatter as its media officer, and he does a huge amount of the spade work. And I don't think I thank him enough, really, for what he does throughout the hockey season in digging out the stories, finding out the team news, who's moved where, and the rest of it. But the other thing that I don't mind sharing with anybody is that you do see commentators who are prepped up to the nth degree for a game of soccer or a game of rugby or whatever the sport. That's not really the way I operate, because there are so many games coming in, as you say, so many new teams. It's virtually impossible to do that degree of preparation for every game you go into. So, of course, I have a few notes written down about clubs and about their players, but I'm not stato. I don't pretend to be stato. I'm not convinced that hockey is a particularly statistics-driven sport, in the sense that we need to know that's the 47th time that Oranje Road
it's not basketball.
I've hit the post or whatever. I try not to have too many preconceived ideas about the game that's about to unfold either, because to me, a game of hockey is also about theatre. And every time you go into the theatre, you want to be surprised. And
I can imagine.
we've had some fabulous theatre, haven't we, in EHL over so many years now.
Wow, absolutely. So, but when you do sit down at the chair on your tower or whatever place that they find for you, because sometimes you are in the most odd places as well, I can imagine, as a commentator.
Some in an ivory tower.
Yeah. So, but when you're sitting down and the whistle is blown and the game starts, as a commentator, do you look at the game differently than the normal spectators, and what do you focus on?
No, I think I am a spectator, and to be honest with you, Ernst, when the first whistle blows, I breathe a hearty sigh of relief, because to me the bit that leads up to the first whistle is the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Because you can't prep for anything after the first whistle, because you don't know what's going to happen, so you are completely off the cuff. No, I guess like everybody else, I'm watching the game. I'm trying very hard not to tell everybody everything they can see already, because it's television and not radio. EHL, through their partners with Southfield, we have some of the most talented television professionals that there is out there. They do an incredible job. And you talk about me wrapped up on my scaffolding tower, but the cameramen too are doing often 4 games a day, and their degree of concentration is incredible. And I look out of my scaffolding tower and I look down the line, and there are the cameramen wrapped up against the elements. The rain's lashing down, and I look back at my TV screen, and the quality of images that they're producing for us are world class. I mean, they have brought so much to the event. They really have, and they're very much part of the EHL family.
They really changed hockey with the rules, but yeah, the way that the game is brought to us, I think that was what the biggest difference that EHL made in the last decade. And absolutely right that you should focus on the way that the game is shown is an absolute miracle there. What do you think that EHL meant for hockey, other than that, other than creating the images that make us want to play hockey?
I think EHL was a very, very forward-thinking project, and people like Leandro Negre and Maurits Hendricks brainstorming it, and other partners as well, Jons Hensel at Amsterdam, Bert Spark, who was the commercial wing of it, certainly in the early days, and the partnerships with the TV companies as well, because at the end of the day, we're all in it together. But I think hockey needed something like the EHL to be a sounding board and a think tank for new ideas. And the strength of hockey in Europe gave it some credibility, and the strength of our clubs in Europe gave it some great atmosphere. It wasn't easy. I mean, I still remember the very early years of EHL. Our crowds were very sparse. It was a bit of a slow burner for 2 seasons, I think, while we got it underway, while teams and national associations grasped the potential that they had with the AHL. But my goodness, since those early stages, we've come on in leaps and bounds, I think. And now I think I'm right in saying that even for our top international players, it's one of the standout events in their personal calendars. And I know that it's an event that everybody wants to be a part of. And
it is.
I have to tell you, the same could be said for me as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think it's the standout event, not just for the players, for the coaches, for the teams, for the clubs,
for sure,
but also for the media and for the spectators.
And
it's also one of these events that everybody wants to be there.
And for the umpires and the officials. And we can't move the game forward unless the umpires are moving at the same pace. And I think one of the great success stories of the EHL is the way that the umpires have been integrated within the main event. And because the umpires generally are wired up and we can hear what they're saying, we can appreciate the contribution they're making to each and every game, and how hard they're working with the players to make it into a spectacle that people genuinely want to watch. And, it's very hard to think over the years in the EHL of where umpires have, I use the hackneyed expression, spoilt the game. But the umpires have grasped that EHL is about an entertaining brand of hockey. And they had to buy into that, and they have bought into it, and it's been fantastic.
We're living sad times at the moment with COVID and lockdowns all over the world and a lot of events, not just sports, but most events being cancelled all over the world. And EHL has fallen victim to that as well. Last time I spoke with Marijke Fleuren, we were still hopeful that the EHL would be played in Amsterdam. But COVID has made this impossible. Do you think EHL will make a comeback soon? And will it be changed, or will we go back to normal, do you think, with EHL?
Well, I'd like to be in a meeting with you and Marijke. That's a meeting of great optimists. But we certainly did hope that it would be possible to play EHL this year. But when we embarked on this crazy COVID journey, none of us knew where it was going to take us. And I'm convinced, 100% convinced that we will be back, and we will be back stronger. And it'll be one hell of a party when we do get back together, because I know from just speaking to my own close contacts how much everybody has missed it. But it was quite the right decision this year to pull the plug on it, because we need to keep everybody within the hockey family and without safe, and we don't want to be responsible for spreading the wretched disease any further than it is already. But we have to believe that there is a solution just around the corner. We have to believe that, and I'm sure that just as soon as it is safe and sensible to go back into battle, we will do so. My only worry is we may all come out of it at different times. Even within the continent of Europe, it may not be possible for everybody within Europe to participate, and that will be a sad thing if that proves to be the case. But I don't think that any event can necessarily wait for all of its family members to be 100% clear before they resurrect something as important as the Euro Hockey League.
If it makes its comeback, do you think, because probably it will be in stages and not every country will probably be ready at the same time, but the chances are that we'll have to come back without audience, without the public. How much will that affect the magic of EHL, do you think?
Oh, massively. Absolutely massively, and I would question the financial viability of EHL without at least some support. Whether we get back to the heady days of a couple of years ago, where we can sell out stadia and have a chance at least of covering our costs, is one thing. But the costs involved in staging EHL are huge, and I'm watching a lot of football, as I'm sure everybody is, on TV at the moment with no crowds, and it does take away massively from the events. I don't even want to think about that, to be honest with you. When EHL comes back, I want it to come back not in a diminished
full force.
Well, full force, and let's not forget that this year was going to be a very special. Last year was going to be a very special year, with the equally amazing project coming to fruition, and of course with the involvement of the women's side of the game in EHL. And that, I know Marijke well enough, and she won't mind me saying this, I'm sure, that must have been a massive disappointment when she had to pull the plug on it this year, because she'd invested so much in making that come about. But I mean, we are where we are, is that well-known expression of the day. And let's hope it's not too long before some bright spark comes up with a vaccine that enables all one day to laugh about these times. So I suspect that may be a long way away.
Moving on then, one of the other great events around the world that helped change hockey, and helped improve hockey, my beliefs anyways, was the Asian counterpart of the EHL, the Hockey India League. What were your thoughts on the Hockey India League, and do you believe that it will make a comeback? Because for the Hockey India League, it's been several years since we had to do without.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Wentz, I'm not as close to the Indian Hockey League as I might have been, as I would have liked to have been in some respects. But I can't see it coming back. A lot will depend, I think, because of the financial basis, the franchise basis that it was operating under. How strong will the Indian economy be when all this is over? I mean, I see the news as I know you do, and I know that India is suffering awfully from COVID at the moment. How are its how are its global companies doing? These are the people, these are the money men who will be putting the money into it. Will hockey or any sport, for that matter, be a priority in a climate where there's perhaps greater unemployment than before, greater need for building new hospitals or whatever? It's a bit of a stretch to see it coming back, certainly in the form it was before. For me personally, I wasn't that close to it. To be honest with you, because of its ad hoc nature, because it wasn't allied either to a country or to a club, it was a little bit false. No, it was a lot false. It certainly caught the imagination of the people, and we all know the passion for hockey that is there in India, either being tapped or to be tapped. And nobody would be happier than me to see it resurrected. But I don't know enough about Indian economy to know whether it is viable or not. And indeed, I've not seen the accounts for the first couple of years of the Indian Hockey League to know whether it was ever a viable option, really.
The other great event that was launched in just a couple of years ago is the big FIH Pro League. What are your thoughts on the Pro League, where it stands right now, and what do you think that the future will be from an event like that?
Yeah, you're giving some pretty hardball questions here, aren't you? What do I think about the Pro League? Well, in some ways, the same as I think about the Indian Hockey League, and it's this, that any event that hockey has, I want to be successful. How you measure success, I'll leave you to have your own ideas about. But one of the measures has got to be whether it's sustainable financially or whether it's going to bleed the sport dry. The timing of COVID, it was never going to be good timing, but I mean, the Pro League was at a stage where it was trying to reshape itself. FIH sensibly started to look at ways they could cut their costs from a very high base to make it less of a loss maker. But we don't really know what's happened, partly because I certainly haven't seen any accounts produced, and partly because the whole thing was truncated and countries went into lockdown at different times. Some countries certainly embrace it. I was lucky enough to be involved in the games in the Netherlands. We had some fabulous crowds, some absolutely astonishing crowds, and again some pretty awful weather. But there was clearly an appetite for it. Clearly an appetite, and some great hockey was played. So I'm sure that the Pro League will come back. It may still need to have a little bit of trimming done. I've done a little bit of commentating on matches from the Pro League, and their model is now that they take the commentators to a studio in Stockholm, and it's not an easy gig. I'll be honest with you, and I have sympathy with anybody who finds themselves sitting behind a monitor in a studio which is about 3 meters by 2 meters, watching a screen at 3 o'clock in the morning because it's being played the other side of the world or whatever, and be expected to commentate live. So it's not ideal, but it's what the game can probably afford at the moment. And of course, I hope the Pro League comes back and comes back strongly and in full flower, as it were. I mean, there is talk about matches going ahead now behind closed doors, and I don't think that's going to help us sell the sport. It probably helps us fulfill contractual arrangements with TV companies, but it's not the showcase that we want it to be.
We have, especially if you're living in Europe, we have two systems of hockey. We have domestic hockey, which is club hockey usually, or schools hockey, or university hockey, and you have international hockey, the game played by national teams. Both of them can be played in tournaments or in a league. Which format is the one that you prefer? Do you prefer a longer running league, as we know in European Cup competitions domestically? Or do you prefer the excitement of short tournament-based events like we had the Champions Trophy back in the past, and like a World Cup, for example, or an Olympics as well?
I like a mixture of them all, Lance. To be honest with you, when I started playing hockey a very long time ago, there weren't leagues at all. You weren't allowed to have leagues. You couldn't win cups. You couldn't win anything really, but apart from, it was a recreational sport, and they weren't bad days either, to be honest with you. And I guess when you drop down the sides, most of the games are played with a good friendly atmosphere and no league points particularly of interest. But no, I think that I think a mixed diet is a good diet. I was a huge fan of the Champions Trophy. And to be honest with you, I would still say that it's there to be resurrected at some point. I think it was a fabulous format. And again, I think most of the people who ever were involved in it, and certainly those who played in it, would not be sorry to see it return. It wasn't broke, but they just decided that they wanted to fix it in a different way. But it's still there. Nothing. We've lost nothing, apart from perhaps a few years, but for me, I don't think it's a one or the other. I like it when you can mix things up. I also quite like the idea of hockey having a bit of a closed season. When I was playing myself, I really quite enjoyed a little bit of cricket, perhaps in the summer, or a little bit of a holiday. And I do worry about some of our top players out there. You're the father of
they're playing 365 days a year almost now. Huh?
For sure. And you can have too much of a good thing sometimes, and you can make people very stale. And it's. I'm not
just the players, the spectators as well.
Yeah,
right? If you get too much of even good hockey, too much is too much. Huh?
Too much is too much. Exactly.
What changes do you foresee happening in hockey, rules wise or event wise or whatever? What do you think will happen for the better or for worse, or what should happen maybe?
Well, I think we're all aware of the direction of travel at the moment, with so much talk and planning now for hockey fives. I think it's inevitable that will be an event. It will be a sport. Again, a bit like the Pro League, we can't afford it to fail. But I hope that its success of hockey fives isn't to the detriment of the 11-a-side game. And I fear that part of the rationale behind its thinking is that it's getting ready to take over should hockey lose its Olympic seat. And that, to me, is the greatest threat to the sport as I know it. But in 20 years' time, perhaps, when people have forgotten about the 11-a-side version of the game, and I fear that they might, if it loses its Olympic status, then it may prove to be a really good thing. I don't think, I'm an old man now, I guess, and I don't think necessarily everything that's gone before was great, and everything that's going to come in the future represents change and is therefore to be opposed. I think the European Federation have got it right in that they are aware of the direction of travel. They've monitored that, and they're going to create their own league. So they're in a position to cover all the bases at any time, without necessarily saying, yes, we're in favour of hockey fives to the detriment of the 11-a-side game. But you've got to be in it to really to have a seat in the conversation. So I welcome that development, but I'm fearful of its potential to change the sport that I know we've both and so many other people have enjoyed over the years. The 11-a-side, the full fat version of the sport.
Okay, coming back closer to home for you then. What do you expect of the English Club Hockey League this season that has just started?
Yeah. Well, probably about the same as I expect of any league this season. I just wish our clubs well. I just hope that they can see their way through, because our clubs are not. And I speak now really from an English perspective. Our clubs are not wealthy institutions. They are social institutions that give a huge amount to their local communities and providing an awful lot of sporting opportunities for kids who otherwise would be up to all sorts of mischief. I know I would have been when I was a boy.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
We've probably been doing it together and causing mayhem somewhere at somebody's expense. But these must be really tested. I'm not particularly connected closely now to a club, but these must be testing times. So how you can keep your clubhouse, which may be staffed professionally or with volunteers, how you can keep that open and viable, how you can support the youngsters who are still... I mean, hockey is hugely popular in the UK amongst our kids. Many of them are starting off in schools, but some of them not. But the schools and the clubs have, I think, in many ways never been closer than they are at the moment, which is great. Mm-hmm. Lots of partnerships being forged between schools and local clubs. And I mean, if one club...
That sounds like a good thing.
It's a great thing. I mean, I know you and I, because we spoke before this podcast started, have different ideas about the strengths and weaknesses of the school system as opposed to the club system. But again, a bit like we were talking about players, maybe a mixture of the two is the perfect ticket. It has to be recognised in England that without the schools and the school facilities, there would be virtually no club hockey possible, because the majority of the club hockey that is played on synthetic turf is being played on school facilities nowadays. There aren't that many of our clubs who've been able to invest sufficiently to have their own turfs down. And
that's one of the points where we disagree.
Well, we don't disagree. It's just that our clubs are formed in a different way. I mean, I learned when I was one of my sojourns to Holland that a lot of the clubs in Holland rent their ground off the local council. And
that was going to be my next question. Yeah. Do you think that English government, local government, or big national government should invest more into sports infrastructure for hockey because of its health benefits and the social benefits of we all know why you play team sports. It helps in the education and it helps in the health of people. Should government invest more in sports infrastructure in England?
Well, that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. I wrote to David Cameron when he was the Prime Minister a few years ago, and said to him, Mr. Cameron, if I choose to give to a charity in monetary terms, let's say £100 to a chosen charity, the government will give me give the charity an extra £25 for their funds. So it's the gift becomes added value.
Yeah,
and that everybody accepts that's a great thing to happen. But what about the volunteers who give their time to the local club? If they could somehow monetize that effort that they're putting in, based perhaps on a minimum wage. So you get somebody who's running youth training on a Sunday morning, putting in 4 hours. If he could cost those 4 hours, even at the minimum wage, and say to the government, I've put in 4 hours worth £25. I claim the tax back on that to be given to my sports club as a charitable foundation. To me, that would give the clubs the funding to get the thing going. I did have a reply. I don't think it was ever good. It wasn't high on his priority list. But to me, that's the sort of idea. That's the sort of. I mean, our volunteers within all of our clubs in all of our countries are fantastic people, without whom there would be no sport. at all. And we're talking about hockey,
Absolutely.
and our volunteers in hockey
Yeah.
are the best of the best. Of that, I have
Mm-hmm.
nothing would convince me otherwise. We would be nowhere without them at all. Nowhere at all. They are the true sponsors.
No, fully agree.
They're the real sponsors of hockey, if you like, in so many ways.
No, 100% agree. 100% agree. Do you think that there is an English Cup that would be capable and that you would see hosting an EHL event? So not at the Lee Valley Stadium, but really at an English club.
Well, that's you mean for the EHL and the EHL round?
Yeah.
Well, we've had one. We had a very successful tournament run by the very good people down at East Grinstead a few years ago now. Blessed with diabolical weather, but it was a great event. And of course we've had one in Northern Ireland as well at Banbridge. One of the best round ones that I can ever remember, and that was
there was a lot of enthusiasm there.
Oh, fabulous, and they're still talking about it now. And to me, that was the gift that keeps on giving. They put so much work.
But why don't we see it more in those regions, in England, in Northern Ireland?
Why don't we see it more? Well, I think the opportunities are not that many, because we used to have 2 round ones. We now only have 1. We have some contractual obligations to our friends in the city of Barcelona, who have helped finance the European Hockey League over a number of seasons now, and you can't just walk away from financial obligations. There has been a marked reluctance from English clubs to put their hand up for these things, and it's not to their credit. But what I can honestly tell you, Ernst, is I think there are more clubs now capable of doing it in England than almost at any time that I can remember. Surbiton ran
That's good to hear.
Surbiton, for example, who are a fabulous club. I wish they were a little close to my home, which is about 100 miles or so away, running many youth teams, great partnerships with local schools, great local support. They run a very successful European nations event for women's event, European clubs event, I should say, which was fabulous. So they could certainly do it, and they have the ambition, the drive, and the infrastructure to do it. Beeston could certainly do it. They've got to qualify first of all. East Grinstead have done it and could probably do it again. Holcombe, I think, could certainly do it.
It sounds like you got candidates enough.
Well, I think we have now, and it's been a bit of a slow burner, and I think people have looked at what's happened in Holland and some of the events that we've seen in Belgium, and in Holland, and in Germany, and in Spain, and I think English people have looked and said, "Not sure we could get that sort of support." Well, I think there is the support there, and I'm a great believer in the old Field of Dreams thing. You build it and they will come, sort of thing. And I think if we, I think you're right to ask me. Apart from Lee Valley, for me, the EHL is about clubs, and I think we should be running our events at clubs whenever and wherever possible. We mentioned about Barcelona, and I won't shy away from the fact the Pau Negre Stadium over there is a community facility, really. Olympic Legacy Stadium, and what the Catalan clubs have done is, I think, pretty much on a rota basis, they've been a sort of a surrogate host, and from the early knockings when it was really quite hard work, they've got better and better and better and better with every edition we've had out there, and so it's a lot more like.
I'm not kicking open doors now when I state that the biggest mistake that the city of Barcelona made when they went into the contract with EHL and said we're going to do all of these first rounds at the Pau Negre Stadium is that location. In my honesty, in my belief, if they would have done one event at Polo Club de Barcelona, another one at Atleti Terrassa or Egara, you would have had, I think, a better audience locally than you have at the moment.
Well, we have had additions to the EHL at all of those venues that you mentioned, and I'd like to think we'll be welcome back at all of them. But he who pays the piper plays the tune, and to an extent, it's the because it's a council facility. They probably want to see it utilised. I thought you were going to say the biggest mistake they made was not using the other pitch, because over one side that our cameras struggle to see, you have the most spectacular view of one of the most spectacular cities in the whole of Europe, but we don't get to see it.
That was the second mistake. In terms of city marketing, you 100% agree. The other pitch offers an amazing view of the city of Barcelona.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable, man. And they're lovely people. But we know that our clubs are special. We know that, and I think we do miss a little bit of trick when we don't go to clubs. But yeah, you asked me about English clubs, and I think there are places that could do it now. And let's not forget our friends in Scotland. At that time, maybe they stood up. I mean, the Banbridge example was just how you can, if you galvanise the community, you can do anything. And Banbridge were a wonderful example of that. I remember on the Sunday morning, I was staying out in the wilds of Moira country out in County Down, and was driving in, stopped at a garage, and the chap looked at me as somebody he hadn't seen any time before in his life. And he said, always said, "What are you doing here?" So, well, I'm here for the hockey. And he wasn't a hockey person, but he knew all about the event, what was happening, what the Banbridge boys had to do that day. It was fabulous. Wow. And I left first time in my life, I left the garage with a tear in my eye. It was really wonderful. And they were great people.
No, I can imagine. Okay, let's move away from the politics of the game and go back to the game itself.
Have you been discussing politics?
A little bit.
Small piece.
You ended up really nicely. You ended up with a tear in the eye to give that emotional feel back. That was a good one. That was a good one, Nick. But if you look at all of the games that you've seen in all of these years that you are there as a commentator, what teams and what players have impressed you the most, and why?
And if only you knew what a difficult question that was. There are so many games and so many players over the years that I've enjoyed their company. I've enjoyed their hockey, it's so. I mean, I've got a soft spot, of course, for the entertainers. The people that play with joy in their hearts and who turn it on, and they are the players that the EHL was invented for, really, and it's given them a platform to showcase what a wonderful, spectacular sport we've got. Which clubs have I enjoyed? Well, all of them in so many ways. I mean, it's very hard. It'd be easy to single out, the Blumendals, the Uhlenhorst, the Hamburgs, the Kampongs, the Garras, pretty much everybody. But I've got a bit of a soft spot for some of our Eastern European friends as well, because they turn up each and every year in some cases, often with very similar looking squads, never with any real prospect of progressing very hard. But just in the hope that they can just edge their game forward a little bit, so they can. And we were talking about where places we should be hosting. I would love, just from a pure development point of view, I would love to see us hold at least one round of the HL in Eastern Europe, probably in Poland,
Poland, Poznan, or whatever.
Something like that, because they've got the facilities now. And I'm sure they've got the people to do it, because they're not without support when they come over either. And so, but the players, you've got to think back, perhaps the early stages. Willie Schickendance was great value. Mo Forster,
absolutely.
Mo Forster has incredible powers of leadership and captaincy, bringing his team back from hopeless situations to turn things around. Turned to Neuer, of course, and all the fun that he's given the sport. I also think about some of our umpires and some of the characters we've seen blowing a whistle and the fun that they.
Whoa! Which umpire would you call out then? I never think about the umpires, but you're right. We need them.
I think there have been people like Hamish Jamson, for example. Paco Vasquez, been great.
Yeah.
Andy Mayer, now a very successful hockey photographer. We've so many top umpires, Olympic quality umpires, who brought who showed that human side. And because they were mic'd up, they became characters too. But obviously, we think about the high scorers, Hertzberger, Jeroen Hertzberger, fabulous little player. Again, another great crowd pleaser. I'm going for the goal scorers, aren't I? And there's been some great.
No, but
there's some great defenders as well, and of course, one of the great joys for me is the quality of the goalkeeping that we've seen. And it's not always orthodox, but it's always exciting. In terms of
that gives some added spectacle as well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, EHL has just been a gift that keeps on giving from first to last. And the great thing about it is you can never take your eye off it, because there's always a twist in every game. As something comes along, it just makes you sit back in the seat saying, "Wow, did we really see that?" And that was the sort of power that Mo Firster had.
What was your most memorable game that you ever watched as a hockey commentator, and why? If you have to single out one game.
Well, you've given me a really hard one to finish with there. I guess you think back to the finals. I'm going to go for the EHL because it's so close to my heart. But I could have gone with some of the European finals I've seen as well. I remember England's men winning a European Cup in Amsterdam a few years back now, and again I had tears not in one eye, in both eyes, and that because that was a remarkable performance by England, and it gave us a chance to hold our heads up again, having gone through a bit of a rough patch. But if we're talking about the 2009, yeah. Well, actually, I'm going for 2008-2009. The final of the EHL was in Rotterdam, and it Bloemendaal UHC, so Uhlenhorst to Hamburg, and it finished 5-4 in favour of Bloemendaal. And I've never seen a bad 5-4 game. Have you? It was
no.
That was great value. But you know what? I don't know how many.
Well, I've seen hockey games with that score that were bad hockey, but they were always spectacular.
That's different. That's different. Yeah, I mean the quality was there. The respect that both teams had for each other was there. The atmosphere was there. It had everything. But those of you who follow EHL as closely as I do, perhaps more closely than I do in some ways, will probably have your own ideas. And I don't think we've got too much wrong over the years in terms of bragging that we provide entertainment. I think there have been some fabulous games, and let's hope there are plenty more just around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a big shame that the big EHL tournament that was about to start right now will not be happening this year. But I share your longing for the fact that it returns. It returns strong, and it returns soon.
Yeah, and we'll return. That's the key thing. We want to, we want to see everybody back doing whatever it is that they do, whether they're players, officials, spectators, the media. Everybody needs to be back, and that's why it's so important that we stick to the rules and we stay safe, and just wait for this storm to blow over.
There's some pretty wise words to end this podcast with. Thank you very much, Nick Irvine, for all of your time and for giving us some extra added value to the games that we love to see.
Thanks, Ernst. It was a great pleasure, as ever.
Thanks for tuning in to Studio Hockey. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, enjoy your hockey. Bye-bye.